Gnostic literature is, at least at first glance, rather puzzling. For instance, if one were to pick up a copy of the Nag Hammadi library, in either the Meyer or the Robinson edition, one would be confronted with hundreds of pages of literature, but no real idea where to begin studying it. Some titles seem vaguely familiar, like the Prayer of the Apostle Paul, or the various Gospels, like the Gospel of Thomas, Philip, or Mary, or perhaps even the Acts of Peter. While other texts appear downright strange, like the Discourse of the Ogdoad to the Ennead or the Trimorphic Protanoia. Yeah, Trimorphic Protanoia. Completely clear. And of course, that's not to mention that many of these texts are filled with long, complicated, and obscure mythologies, words that are incredibly unusual, long strings of vowels for some reason, and many texts are sadly mere fragments. It's honestly overwhelming, and it's very natural to ask, where in the world do I begin studying this vast corpus that we now call Gnostic literature? In this episode of Esoterica, I want to offer an answer to just that question. In my opinion, the best place to start studying Gnostic literature is a text called the Secret Book of John, or sometimes referred to as the Apocryphon of John. Now, while the Apocryphon of John is, at least in my opinion, one of the best places to start studying Gnostic literature, that doesn't at all indicate that it's going to be a walk in the park. However, I think by studying the Apocryphon of John rather closely, one does get some appreciation of what we might call Gnostic mythology and the overall tenor of the kind of literature that one might encounter in something like the Nag Hammadi library or the Bruce Codex. Further, I think by studying the Apocryphon of John, one does get some sense of the overall tenor of what we might call Gnostic Christianity, although again, I have to say that with some degree of caveats. Also, I think what's interesting about the Apocryphon of John is that it disrupts some of the stereotypes often grouped with the idea of Gnosticism. So I hope you'll join me as we explore the Secret Book of John, or the Apocryphon of John, a foundational text of what scholars now refer to as Gnosticism. I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and welcome to Esoterica, where we explore the arcane side of history, philosophy, and religion. As you may know, Gnosticism is a bit of a fraught category in the academic study of religion these days. While it's popularly held that there existed an ancient religion called Gnosticism, of which there were Jewish, Christian, and even later Islamic variants, that very category, Gnosticism, has come under sustained academic attack in the past several years. So much so that there's a very strong scholarly current which rejects the existence of a historical religion called Gnosticism and basically claims that there were no such thing as Gnostics. They were simply Christians that had a very specific way of doing Christianity that we now, as scholars, call Gnostic, but they themselves, in fact, never refer to themselves as such. Now, I think this is an incredibly important debate, and understanding just what we refer to when we call something Gnostic is an incredibly important part of academic scholarship on the history of religions, and I'm going to cover that debate in a future episode. With that debate in mind, I just want to say that I'm going to be using the term Gnosticism and Gnostic quite provisionally through the course of our exploration of the Apocryphon of John, and typically when I'm using those words, I'm using them somewhat under the rubric developed by Vanderbroek, which is currently on the screen. I'll talk about his book toward the end of the episode and why I think his introduction to Gnosticism is one of the best out there, so stay tuned to the end to learn more about that. With that caveat in place, we can ask the question, what is the Apocryphon, or the Secret Book of John? Well, simply put, it's a kind of gospel. That is to say, a text providing good news about the salvation of human beings. While the typical Gospels of the New Testament take the form of biographies of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, the Apocryphon of John is rather different. In fact, it acts as a kind of continuation of the Gospel of John found in the New Testament. Here, in what appears to be the period after the resurrection of Jesus, John the Apostle is being taunted by a Pharisee about the very teachings of Jesus. Distraught, John actually retreats into the desert, and it's there that the sky is torn asunder and the resurrected Jesus provides John a secret teaching. That secret teaching, or apocryphon, revealed to John by the resurrected divine Jesus, is the subject of the text we'll be exploring today. But before turning to the contents of the apocryphon of John, let's talk about the text itself. It actually survives in a whopping 4 Coptic manuscripts that date from roughly the 3rd to the 5th centuries. As you may know, Coptic is the final form of the ancient Egyptian language, originally written in hieroglyphics, but eventually translated into various other scripts, including hieratic and demotic, and eventually being written in the Greek script. So basically, Coptic is the Egyptian language being written in the Greek script, with a couple of extra letters thrown in from the Demotic alphabet. Now, I know that 4 manuscripts doesn't sound like a lot, but when you consider that virtually no intact canonical gospel manuscripts survive from this same period, along with very few copies of the Iliad and Odyssey, one is confronted with the reality that it is positively shocking that 4 independent copies of the Apocryphon of John survive from late classical antiquity. Further, it seems like the text was originally written in Greek and then translated multiple times into Coptic. We have slight dialectical differences in the translations that have survived into Coptic. Now, the fact that the text has been translated from Greek into Coptic several times tells us that there was some demand for people to read this text in their indigenous language, the language of Egypt, which tells us that the text was quite popular. The text itself survives in 2 different recensions, a longer and shorter version. The longer version includes a long list of demons that are responsible for the construction of the primordial atom, taken from an alleged book of Zoroaster, along with a hymn of providence or pronoia, which I'll talk about later, appended to the very end of the text. It's also worth noting that the various versions of the Apocryphon of John don't always exactly agree. For instance, in the Berlin Codex, which was discovered in the 19th century, there's an important note that the distinction between men and women, specifically the subordination of women to men, was actually instituted by the hideous pseudo-god Yaldabaoth. And so in that version, we have a very interesting idea that patriarchy itself is an unjust form of social relation instituted by a false god. A not minor point if you're, a woman. So if you want to study the Apocryphon of John very closely, you'll want to do a kind of comparative analysis of the various versions that survive. I'll talk about those different versions toward the end and where you can study them each independently or together synoptically if you choose. So let's turn to the question of how to date the Apocryphon of John, which is challenging. The shorter recension of the Apocryphon of John is typically thought by scholars to be the earlier version, and there are even a current among scholarship to take that the framing device using the Apostle John is in fact later accretion onto an earlier, perhaps even pre-Christian Gnostic text. So that the core of the text is perhaps the earliest section, and then there is a kind of Christian bookend put on at the beginning and the end, although there's a lot of debate about just the degree to which that's true. The earliest discussion of what we take to be the contents of the text can be found on the detection and the overthrow of so-called knowledge, or gnosis. This text is typically referred to in the Latin as Adversus Haereres, and it was written by the Proto-Orthodox bishop Irenaeus sometime around 180 of the Common Era. Now, this all points to a very important factor in thinking about the popularity of the Apocryphon of John: location. What's really fascinating about the fact that the 4 Coptic manuscripts that survive were likely produced in Egypt, what's interesting is that we have Irenaeus writing his book against the Apocryphon of John all the way over in Gaul, what is now France. The fact that 4 different manuscripts have survived, and the fact that Irenaeus attacks the text with such vigor, tells us, given the geographic range of the text being found in France all the way to Egypt, and the fact that he feels the need to attack it with such vigor, tells us that this text was in fact rather popular. So while the Apocryphon of John was not authoritative through the entire rise and development of Christianity through the ages, there's no doubt that at least in this very early period that the text was very popular and widely read. So as I mentioned earlier, the very core of the text may even predate Christianity. We have a rough idea for when the text of the Apocryphon of John was produced as we know it. The Gospel of John we typically think was composed sometime around 100 of the Common Era, And if we have Irenaeus arguing against the Apocryphon of John around 180 or 185 of the Common Era, so it makes some sense that the version of the Apocryphon of John, perhaps as we know it, was being composed sometime between roughly 100 of the Common Era and 185, around the time perhaps that Irenaeus begins to argue against it. Now, the Coptic translations which have actually survived to this day probably date to a much later period, perhaps the 3rd century. In fact, when we look at the Nag Hammadi library, inside of the cartonnage of some of those codices, the cartonnage is simply the packing material that's used to make the covers a bit stronger, there's actually a date, several dates in fact, inside of the cartonnage of those codices, and the latest date there is 348 of the Common Era. So that gives us a rough sense about when the Coptic text would have been produced and when the Apocryphon of John, at least as we know it in the Coptic editions that survive, would have been produced. There's also some good reason to believe that the Berlin Codex, the one discovered in the 19th century, actually the first manuscript discovered of the Apocryphon of John, actually dates to a slightly later period. But again, if one wants to study the Apocryphon of John in all of its various versions and all of its various recensions, it's going to be very important to study all 4 manuscripts and their translations, if that's possible. Now, if you think the question of when the Apocryphon of John is vexing, just wait till we get to who wrote it. That is the really difficult question to answer. As I mentioned earlier, the core mythological section of the text may in fact be pre-Christian. There are elements of Middle Platonic philosophy along with Jewish mythology we found in that central text. Now, of course, this is perplexing because if you read the text, it's very clear that the author of the text does not like the Israelite God of Genesis. In fact, that God is not a God at all in the Apocryphon of John. It's a kind of pseudo-God, an evil, malevolent entity. So the writer of the text certainly knows some Jewish literature. They might even be Jewish, although their relationship with Judaism is, well, let's call it complicated. The kind of literary, philosophical, and religious sophistication of the text points in the direction of somewhere like Alexandria in Egypt. It's there that we have a highly syncretistic community of intellectual pursuits, ranging from everything from the indigenous traditional religion of Egypt through Judaism to Hermeticism and a wide variety of philosophical movements, including Middle Platonism and Stoicism. However, the text as we have it now is eminently Christian, and I really want to put a very fine point on this. The people that wrote, edited, and composed the text as we know it would have identified primarily as Christian, much more so as Christian than, for instance, as Gnostic. And that's part of the reason why, by the way, this term Gnostic and Gnosticism has come under scholarly criticism in recent years. The fact that we refer to these texts as Gnostic should not in any way overshadow the fact that the people who took these teachings to be authoritative and salvific were fundamentally pious Christians. While Orthodox Christianity was the one that ultimately won the day, so to speak, that shouldn't at all diminish this fact. These texts were being read and studied for their salvific value by Christians. So it's clear that the version of the Apocryphon of John that survives, the one that we have in the various 4 manuscripts that have come down to us, are fundamentally Christian texts, even though they may be composed of pre-Christian or para-Christian literatures that have been edited together into one volume. But regardless, that's about all we can say about who wrote it. It seems to be composed of several different volumes in a highly educated intellectual and spiritual milieu, perhaps Alexandria, by a community of Christians who are looking to text and teaching like this for their salvific character. So, just what is the salvific secret teaching to be found in the Apocryphon of John? Well, let me begin by saying that any attempt to summarize this text is going to basically fail. Every single sentence in this text is so packed with information that it's going to be impossible for me to accurately summarize the teachings of this text. There's simply no substitution for you go and studying the text yourself. However, I'm going to venture the impossible and try to summarize this incredibly difficult text. The text begins with a kind of negative theological account of an utterly transcendent alien god, who through knowing itself produces a secondary being called the Barbello. Just what Barbello means is incredibly mysterious. With the combination of the ineffable ultimate father god and the mother Barbello god, A third kind of being is produced, and that is the divine Christ, or autogenes, the self-created one. Further semi-divine entities emanate or flow from the relationship of the transcendent Father, the Mother, and the divine Christ in the form of syzygies, or pairs, and these various pairs are typically attendant to either the Barbelo or Christ. Altogether, the syzygies, along with the divine trinity of the transcendent Father, the Barbelo, and the Christ, form the pleroma, or the divine fullness. This fullness is populated by a range of divine beings or semi-divine beings called aeons, and the last of those aeons to be produced is wisdom in the form of Sophia. Sophia, or divine wisdom, seeks to emulate the Father and desires to create things on her own, and her desire to create things without the consent of her partner aeon produces a kind of cosmic disaster. From this unbalanced desire emerges a hideous, nightmarish entity referred to as Yaldabaoth. Exactly what Yaldabaoth means is a bit clear. I tend to think that it may come from a phrase coming from Hebrew, something like Yeled Bohu, which might mean something like the child of chaos. At any rate, this hideous monstrosity is expelled from the pleroma by Sophia and is sort of alone on its own. Now, because this hideous entity has some amount of divine power in it, and because it has a vague memory of being in the pleroma, the fullness of the divine world, it seeks to create its own kind of micro-pleroma, or its own kind of universe. And that universe it creates is a kind of inversion of the pleroma. And Yaldabaoth then proceeds to populate that inverted reality with all kinds of demonic entities. These demonic entities include a wide range of rather nasty beings, including the archons, or the leaders of the cosmic world, and these are typically identified with the various kinds of celestial bodies. And it's here in the text, with this cosmic disaster of Sophia producing Yaldabaoth, and Yaldabaoth creating this kind of inverted, horrifying reality, that the text of the Apocryphon of John really begins to show its genius by re-spinning the original Genesis creation story to be found in the Hebrew Bible and the Torah, by showing that the God of that creation story, the God of Genesis, is in fact none other than the nightmarish entity known as Yaldabaoth, the child of chaos. It's at this point in the secret teaching that Yaldabaoth declares that itself is basically the only God. It says, "I am a jealous God, there are none other before me," only to be immediately corrected from the pleroma itself, which says, hey, look, you're not the only thing, there is this other thing that exists, the human being. And this human being from the pleroma is actually reflected in some sense in the nightmarish, chaotic waters of the primordial creation of Yaldabaoth. After seeing the divine primordial man reflected in those initial chaotic waters, Yaldabaoth and its various demons attempt to create a kind of psychic copy of that Adam, or that human being. However, they fail to actually animate the being. And this is where the Mother Father, or Barbelo, along with the Transcendent Father, actually tricks Yaldabaoth into breathing in some of its latent divinity into the primordial Adam, or the primordial human being, thus animating it, in some sense, tricking Yaldabaoth and transferring some of its power, which again originally comes from the divine realm via Sophia, into the divine human being. It's then that Yaldabaoth realizes that it's been tricked and actually casts the psychic body of the Adam, the divine human being, into the furthest depths of matter. In fact, it casts the first human being into a kind of garden of delight. The word Eden, from Garden of Eden, actually means delight. And in the Apocryphon of John, the Garden of Eden is actually meant to be a physical trap in which physical pleasure, specifically the pleasures of the body, are meant to forever trap the body, the psychic body, and the physical body of Adam in this garden. So the Garden of Eden itself is not meant to be a paradise, according to the Apocryphon of John, but a kind of prison. At the moment of being cast down into this physical prison of the Garden of Eden, the divine transcendent Father takes pity on the primordial human being and places inside of them a kind of divine being, epinoia, which will later allow them to reach salvation. Of course, this enrages Yaldabaoth, and Yaldabaoth attempts to cut into the physical body of the Adam to extract epinoia. Of course, epinoia has already fled back in the divine realm, and it's in that process that Yaldabaoth actually creates a kind of physical double of epinoia in the form of life, or Chava, our word that gets translated as Eve. So Eve is a kind of physical mirror, in some sense, of the divine epinoia. Of course, the Apocryphon of John continues to riff in this really amazing way on the Genesis creation story, where in the Genesis creation story, the human beings are told not to eat of the tree of knowledge, and when they eat of the tree of knowledge, it actually condemns them for having rebelled against God. However, in the Apocryphon of John, it is precisely because that they disobey Yaldabaoth, they eat from the tree of knowledge, that they gain understanding of their plight, and it is there that they can begin the process of working toward their own salvation, escaping the prison that is the Garden of Eden, and eventually making their way back to the divine pleroma. So in the Apocryphon of John, the Garden of Eden story is not a fall from grace, but it is in fact a kind of a liberation, or at least the process, the start of a liberation from the prison of the physical world back into the divine pleroma. After their expulsion from the garden, Yaldabaoth actually sexually assaults Chava, or life, and this produces two demonic entities which rule over the physical human body. These roughly correlate to Cain and Abel. Despite these demonic powers ruling over the physical body, Adam, the primordial human being, and Chava, life, do engage in sexual intercourse and produce a son, Seth. And it is Seth, produced through their conjunction, is the spiritual ancestor of all those that achieve knowledge about the truth of the physical reality, and thus, in some sense, Seth is the line through which this type of epinoia, or this type of salvific knowledge, is going to flow. Seth, in some sense, becomes the spiritual heir of all Gnostics. In fact, this type of Gnosticism is sometimes referred to as Sethian Gnosticism for this emphasis on the character of Seth. It's here in the text that John actually interrupts the ongoing revelation from Jesus to ask about the ultimate fate of the salvation history of all human beings. And there's good news. I mean, it's a gospel. In the good news, and again, this is incredibly interesting given the fact that we typically think of Gnosticism as being rather pessimistic. The good news is that basically everyone, all of mankind, is going to eventually achieve this kind of salvific knowledge. The only people that will ultimately be condemned are those that achieve Gnosis and then betray it or abandon it. According to the Apocryphon of John, basically everyone is eventually going to reach salvation. Again, the only kind of people that won't are those that achieve Gnosis and then betray it. Of course, Yaldabaoth isn't done with human beings yet. It attempts to wipe out all of human beings through the institution of fate, which can be resisted through spiritual powers. It attempts to destroy the line of Seth with a catastrophic flood, which the luminous epinoia actually informs Noah about. And eventually it institutes these demonic entities falling from the earth and mating with human women to somehow tempt human beings, although it's not exactly clear. Of course, this is the reference to the infamous Nephilim to be found in Genesis 6, but of course also spelled out in much greater detail in the Book of the Watchers, or the first book of Enoch. Following the description of the Nephilim, there's a kind of abrupt break where there appears the hymn of pronoia. Now again, exactly how this hymn of pronoia fits with the rest of the text isn't clear. Many scholars think that the hymn of the pronoia, or divine providence, is actually an earlier document that is fused onto the end of the Apocryphon of John. However, what we have is a story in which the pronoia has descended 3 times into this sort of chaotic abyss of physical reality, and it is only on the 3rd occasion that the pronoia was able to awaken human beings from their ignorance and thus begin the process of salvation. It is in fact in that 3rd awakening that pronoia baptizes humankind with a kind of 5-fold baptism, inaugurating the process of their salvation. If you're interested, I've actually made a separate video from another Gnostic text in which that baptism, or a baptism somewhat like it, it's a 3-fold baptism as opposed to a 5-fold baptism, but I've made another video in which Gnostic baptism rituals are actually described at some length. So if you're interested in the ritual side of Gnostic Christianity, you may want to check out my episode on Gnostic baptism rituals.
Now you might pray to God, y'all, but I like Lucifer best of all. Don't keep changing, waiting. Don't keep changing, waiting. Sunday school is a place for fools. It's hot in hell, but the devil's cool. Don't keep changing, waiting. Don't keep changing, waiting. So don't just sit there, join the club. Sell your soul to Beelzebub.
Hey everybody, it's Count Jackula here to announce that is ready for the sin to begin. Welcome to the stream. You have just been watching the YouTube channel Esoterica, which I recommend that you follow and subscribe to. Hit that like button. He has a lot of great information about ancient Western and Middle Eastern religions and text. He's very, very, very good. As you could hear, he's thoroughly knowledgeable. He's actually a professor of such things, a PhD, an actual doctor of his field. You know, and so his stuff is usually extremely well researched, and of course, like my kind of gold standard for whether or not I listen to a YouTube channel is this person more verifiably knowledgeable on a subject than I am? And he absolutely most certainly is. If we were to put this in role-playing game terms, while I may be either a bard or a sorcerer, he is a wizard and a lore master. He probably has forgotten more than I will ever know on the subjects he speaks about. You know, he doesn't do a lot of, unfortunately, he doesn't do a lot of things with Asian folklore. That is seems to be a little bit outside of his purview. But if you want a lot of good stuff about anything relating to the modern Abrahamic religions and their origins and anything that has to do with the modern or ancient forms of them, he's an excellent resource. He is an excellent resource. Yeah, I have actually, yeah. Shin Megami Tensei is actually largely influenced and inspired by the Gnostic teachings. You know, that's why you tend to, at the end, you tend to fight Yaldabaoth. In the fourth one, you actually fight the two primary Japanese gods, Aramatsu and let's see. It's like Aramatsu and I forget the other one. Aramatsu, I believe, is the female. Oh no! Apparently, it's the Izanagi and Izanami. Oh no! I was right. I was right before. It was it's Aramatsu and her husband. Yeah, she is. Her symbol is the red dot, and that is the sun of Japan. She is a sun god. And I think her she has a counterpart, but I am not remembering who he is. I used to know. I used to know who he was. Let me see if I can find it very quickly. Um, let's do. Come on, come on, come on. Um, oh, I think in no. Looks like in Persona 4 it was Izanagi and Izanami. Those are the primary ones. Which was interesting because they don't while the games are very much steeped in like Japanese pop culture, like the fourth one was very steeped in Shintoism. You know, the third one was very Greek, and the fifth one was the most one. It was the most overtly Gnostic. Five was the most overtly Gnostic, because usually, even though Yaldabaoth often would show up, particularly in the first two Persona games, and in the Shinigami Tensei Nocturne, they don't usually deeply go into his nature. But in the fifth one, they do. They do. They greatly go into the nature of Yaldabaoth. Whereas in 1 and 2, he's kind of mainly used as an evil god. You know, it's sort of like, oh, he's an evil god. Okay, you know, Yaldabaoth did it, you know, kind of stuff. And in Shinigami Tensei Nocturne, he is usually just translated as God. But in the fifth one, he is specifically Yaldabaoth, and he does very Yaldabaoth-like things. You know, and it was kind of it was a very interesting take that the goal of the trickster is to defeat a false god. You know, it's to kill false gods. You know, pierce illusions, kill false gods, things like that. The Persona games don't tend to go into like the pleroma that much because that's a very nebulous. It's not a nebulous concept, but it's a very abstract one. You know, it is the fullness. It is the it's not just the truth of everything. It is the everything. You know, beyond even the universe, it is the everything. You know, and there the true gods reside. and all souls reside with them because each soul is actually an emanation of one of them. Aeon Flux did a lot of Gnostic stuff. Neon Genesis Evangelion really did. Gnosticism was also the primary form of Christianity that involved that Carl Jung dealt with. He was around about the time he was already practicing psychology. He was already a famous psychologist, and had established the field. Had helped establish the field by the time most of the Gnostic texts had been uncovered. They had been uncovered in Egypt. And this rocked him. He read those texts and that rocked him. His the Red Book, which is basically his grimoire, is wall to wall loaded with his meditations on Gnostic ideas. It's just loaded with it. And it's very obvious he's also trying to do what Joseph Campbell would also worked on. But Jung came at it from a very, very, very different perspective. He was studying how Jung was studying how he was trying to get at where these ideas come from. These kind of almost universal ideas, where they come from. Whereas Campbell's work was much more about boiling them down to their essence. He was concerned with the connection between most of them, but like he felt that if you boiled them down to their essence, you could get at their meaning. Whereas Jung was of the opinion, well, Jung would not have argued that point, but he was coming at it from the point of what this meant for the human mind. One thing that is very, very, very clear from the Gnostic texts is they are fantastically anti-patriarchal and anti-hierarchical. Whether or not individual Gnostics, how they felt about women might be at odds with what the teachings were. But the teachings are quite clear. It does blame the feminine principle for creating the initial problem, but it also acknowledges that without the feminine principle, there is no solution. And if you're familiar with Jordan Peterson, was a crank and an idiot. He makes reference to what it was that Carl Jung was really trying to do and how disastrous that would be. And from readings of Jung's work, it's clear that what he wanted, or what he hoped he could achieve, was the destruction of the faiths of the world, of the established religions of the world, particularly the three Abrahamic faiths. Which is ironic because that's where most of the imagery he uses comes from. But if he was a Gnostic, he would have also have believed that such things were inherently corrupted. So Peterson's whole thing, and why he is so distrustful of Jung's purposes, but also tries to subvert them to his own ends, is that Jung did not believe in masculine supremacy. Absolutely did not believe in it. He thought that was a complete horseshit and a complete lie. To him, it was his understanding was that these hierarchical structures, particularly patriarchal structures, were illusory. They were illusions. They were illusions that must be destroyed. And for a person like Peterson, who is incredibly steeped in patriarchal thinking, that is super threatening. And it's super threatening because Jung had a point. It's really hard to argue against the idea that that patriarchal structures are completely false. The only thing they are good for is spreading misinformation and getting people to align with that misinformation. That is the primary thing that they are good for. Yeah, Peterson has a dogmatic need for masculinity. That's well put. That's well put, GL. Yeah, whereas my opinion is that masculinity is not a form of power that is greater than femininity. No, it just isn't. Because Peterson is also looking for the perfect example of such. He's looking for a perfect example of such. Whereas Jung did not believe such a thing existed. He did not believe that there was a pure masculinity. He did not believe that there was a pure femininity. He believed that only through one's understanding of both is one a complete person. Well, here's the problem. Here's an issue with Kira. Here's an issue with that. Whether or not you associate those forces with a specific gender, culturally they do exist, but they are not static things. The concept of what is masculine and what is feminine is actually extremely fuzzy. It is naturally very, very, very fuzzy. Yeah, Jung was actually quite progressive. He was very progressive. That's one of the reasons a lot of people were afraid of him, yeah, or didn't trust him, but also why he was so greatly admired. You know, his lack of faith in patriarchal structures is actually what got him in brought him in conflict with Freud. You know, there was a period of time when Freud was kind of leading towards Jung's camp, was kind of coming around to his way of thinking, but he clearly Freud clearly essentially sold his soul to the machine of psychological academic orthodoxy. Like, he absolutely did that. You know, and that's why, while he is lauded as the father of psychology and psychiatry, which is not altogether undeserved, he is, for a long time, he was put on a much higher pedestal than Jung. It wouldn't really be until post Campbell, actually, that Jung would return to prominence within the psychological field itself. Like, he had always been popular. He had always, been that guy who was like, Freud's rival, and so a lot of people liked him. But, like, he didn't have as much. He didn't have as much cachet academically as Freud did for a very long time. It really was about, the 60s and 70s when Jung would return, which coincides with the inception of Joseph Campbell's teachings. And considering how often, like, Campbell quoted Jung, you're like, yeah, it's not a coincidence. That's not a coincidence. Because, like, Campbell was around even before his works were widely available. Like, most of, like, the stuff from Here with a Thousand Faces and stuff like that had been published in academic journals for a while. And during the 60s, when people, like, kind of got a little bit more interested in this stuff, like, he was right there. He was there. He wasn't a hippie, but he was one of those academics that, like, alternative thinkers were really attracted to. But he wasn't like Timothy Leary or Terence McKenna or one of those guys. He was much more. Joseph Campbell he's a little stuffier than those dudes. Actually, he's a lot stuffier than those dudes. But for an academic, he was considered a little too fast and loose, which I thought was hilarious. I always think it's hilarious. And I'm like, fast and loose? Like, criminy. Like, the body of research itself tells you that he approached the subject with serious academic rigor, probably about as much as anyone could bring. So a lot of that is to say, Kira, that while your own gender identity may be somewhere in those fuzzy areas, culturally, masculine and feminine are forces that exist and you must contend with. And you do occupy a space on that continuum. You can't not. Like, that's kind of the idea. Inherent in the idea of the relationship between masculinity and femininity is that it encompasses everybody. Where one falls is not predictable. Not until it is known. Not until it is known. In particular to the person themselves. The irony is I think most people have an understanding of their gender, but I think sometimes the language gets in the way. I definitely see like a lot of the issues that people have with like trans people and gender fluid folks is largely semantic, or at least the origin is semantic. The origin of the discomfort is semantic, and things like the hatred and stuff like that actually comes later. Where would I say Kinsey fits into this equation? Oh, Kinsey is a completely different axis. Because Kinsey's research is about sexual attraction. And that's different. That's a different thing. It's related, but it's a different thing. It's like the difference between protons and electrons. They both are things that exist within a molecule, but they handle different stuff. It's part of the equation. But important thing to know about Kinsey is that he is talking about sexual attraction. He's not talking about a vague state of femininity or masculinity. He is specifically talking about who wants to fuck who. It's one of the reasons why in rhetorical arguments, people don't like bringing him up. People don't like bringing him up because they can question his methods, but they can't really argue with his conclusions or the way he came to them. To argue with Kinsey is to say there is no such thing as a homosexual attraction at all. Which is so demonstrably and obviously false that the minute you accept that as a falsehood, you are agreeing with him. Yeah. We weren't talking about sexual attraction. We were talking about, like, the concept of gender itself, to which heterosexual or homosexual attraction can apply to either. Although he did find that, like, women are more likely. He did find that women are more likely to act on same-sex attractions. Or same-sex attractions. Yeah. And also more likely to also engage in heterosexual attraction. Basically, women are much more likely to be bisexual, was his conclusion. Whereas men, even though they may have those feelings, were less likely to act on them. But he wasn't sure if that was, but he came to no conclusions as to whether that was part of the state of the gender or had something to do with societal pressures. Like, that was beyond what he was looking at. He made some comments on it, but he didn't really do a lot of studies on it. And he was very clear about that. One of the things I think is really hilarious, one of the things you have to understand about Kinsey, another thing you have to understand about Kinsey is that all of the arguing over Kinsey comes from a world that largely agrees with his conclusions. They're arguing the finer points. But it's ridiculous it's super ridiculous for, but like I said, it's super ridiculous for even the most conservative, like, fucking American to say Kinsey was totally wrong, because that means gay people don't exist. And you can't commit hatred against people that don't exist. Yeah, I would agree, Cat Hermit. I think cishet men have a lot more shame in their deviation from the perceived ideal of masculinity. I think there's a lot more shame in it. Which is why I hate it when these super, like, masculine dipshits, these super, like, manpower dipshits talk about not listening to the emotional pain of men. And I am like, you are the primary cause of it. You are the primary reason for its existence. You fucking mumser. Jesus, you and your trad wives, and we know there are far fewer of those than there are, like, guys that believe in hyper masculinity. Otherwise, they would all be thoroughly laid, which they aren't. Yeah. Also, the conservatives have a great equation of gender roles with genitalia. Like that's another thing. You know, it's very upsetting. One of the other things I hate about the trad wife is it's all about who is the most socially acceptable woman to be attracted to. It's about which women are most socially acceptable to be attracted to. That's that's what that is. Because remember, these are the same guys who listen to that shit are the same ones who came up with the idea of the moped girl. You know, the one that's fun to ride, but you don't want anyone catching you riding it. But like anyone who's ever ridden a monkey bike, kiss my ass. Fun is fun. Is there a male counterpoint to the trad wife? Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. The good Christian man. You know, he's physically fit, probably played football in high school. You know, baseball's also pretty good, is good, but not as good as football. Um, Basketball is okay, but a little too black. You know, shit like that. As you can tell, I got opinions. No, the trad wife thing is not a joke. It is not a joke. It's not a joke because those accounts are pushed by churches. Churches and church groups. That's how they got so popular. How did the trad thing start? Well, if you're talking about the phenomenon, it started because churches decided that they were going to use TikTok to spread conservative values. They're going to use social media, in particular TikTok, to push conservative values. Because TikTok was where all the young people were, and that's where that's who they wanted to influence. Always got to get the children. Always got to control what the children see. Otherwise, they won't believe our bullshit. But no, the vast majority of all the tradwife stuff is 100% serious. Haven't you noticed that since its inception, there's been an uptick in like skinny white women who've gotten more and more racist on social media? It's because they think everyone unconsciously agrees with them. Oh, it's doing its thing. It's doing its thing. It's essentially a psyop. No, it's essentially a psyop that is intended to gather useful idiots. Yeah, it is very unnerving to see this content. Because it ain't about Jesus. You know, it's not about any of the spirituality. Like, whenever it comes to spirituality, they always say the same thing. And I just pray. Just pray. And that just fixes everything. I'm like, no, it doesn't. No, it fucking doesn't. First of all, Christian prayer is hollow. All you're supposed to be doing is saying, God, you're so great. You're just so great. You're just so great. And I know you're going to lead me to the righteous path. You're so great. And I know you're going to lead me to the righteous path. So even if God fucking talked back to you, like, you're not going to hear it because that's all you're supposed to do. Prayer's not prayer and meditation is not supposed to exist for God. It's supposed to exist for you. You know, the Sabbath is for you, not you for the Sabbath. You know, like, it's ridiculous. Question, what does this have to do with us getting the film negatives of Event Horizon? Well, did they get it? Did they find them? Because if they did, I'm going to say that's a sign I'm right, and that's how it fucking relates. Great news from the film gods. Blessings upon us. Yeah. The irony is that to push that shit, it has to be a grift. How could you be a trad wife making content to make money on the side? That's the man's job. Exactly, Victor. Exactly. Hey, man, I'm not sure if you're sober. I am. I don't think you should be live streaming half in the bag. Okay. Well, I'm not, so we're good. Yeah, Jesus spent time with marginalized people, flipped tables at a temple. Like, yeah, because it was falsehood. You know, he is the anointed one, the Cristo. You know, the Christ, the bearer of the truth. You know, you think a bearer of the truth is always going to be hanging out with rich fucks? Of course not. That'd be ridiculous. Yeah, it's never about Jesus for most conservatives. Yeah, it really isn't. It really isn't. They have to fucking mutate Jesus into Donald Trump. You know? You saw a news story about a trad wife who used the N-word, had her account banned, and then made a tweet. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's what's really underneath this. That's what's really underneath the whole trad wife thing, which is, I don't know if you noticed, but there ain't no black trad wives. Why, they are white people. Could it be that that's part of the point? I'm not saying it is, but it definitely is. Hey, Nitro G, what's up? You're Adventist, and gosh, the aspect of Sabbath is one of the things where it's like, if this is a day of rest, why is church so taxing? Yeah, well, all I can say, that's what I said before. The Sabbath exists for you, not you for the Sabbath. Yeah, I would love a restored version of the pre-cut version of Event Horizon. You see one, but the girl was groomed by a 40-year-old white dude. Ooh. Yeah, sounds about right. And why is it these American conservative Christians are so, like, interested in making child brides legal? Doesn't that strike you as, like, beyond fucked up? I always thought that was weird. Like, even in pedophile bills, it's like, yeah, but we're also going to lower the marrying age. What? Okay. Well, showing your ass there, I guess. You know? Because there ain't no such thing in the world as fucking pedophile ridden as a church. Like, for real. Like, nothing else holds a candle to it. People are like, oh, Hollywood. And I'm like, oh, yeah, Hollywood's got them. Hollywood's got them. And they usually protect them just the way the church does. But churches are an order of magnitude. They're not even a single order of magnitude. Orders of magnitude greater on that in that regard. Best thing that you can do if you're a pedophile is become a priest. Period. You'll get away with it every time. Like, even if they fucking catch you, you'll get away with it. Oh, well, those churches are just trying to protect their image. No, they're looking out for each other. Grandpa used to be a chauffeur driving nuns around town. He also drove Bishop Sheen a few times. Oh, my God. I remember when I met the Archbishop of Baltimore. And then, like, 2 months later, he was brought up on child molestation charges. Like, he still essentially got away with it. They moved him somewhere else. But I was like, so weird. You ever fucking heard stories of dudes who, like, hire sex workers and then have to pray and try to get the sex worker to pray with them. And sometimes they do. I mean, like, hey, a bug is. But I'm always like, whoa, that is, dude raped me and then asked if he could pray for my soul. Wow, that is amazing. Like, holy shit. Holy shit. Oh, you're reading the history of the Philippines and there's too many stories of priests and their antics and crimes? Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's because the Philippines are largely Christianized. That's why a lot of them have Spanish names. Yeah, it's almost like it's not a bug, it's a feature, Yeah, I know what you mean, Flashman. Sisters of Battle. Sisters of Battle are awesome. Like, one of the things that I really didn't like one of the debates in the 40K fandom that I'm like, oh guys, get over yourselves, is why there are no female Space Marines. And I found myself going like, okay, but you got the perfect out, right? You could just make the Sisters of Battle the equivalent. But no, they can't be as powerful as Space Marines. Oh, fuck you. Fuck you. What was it cost you? Nothing. It costs you fucking nothing. Like, because I'll tell you why girls like the sisters battle. It ain't always the one, but the ones that like it, they know why. It's because you get to fucking walk around in a bondage corset with a giant combat flamethrower and a ridiculously huge chainsaw. There you go. It's that simple. So it's like, well, no, just make them the equivalent of Space Marines. Like, why not? Like, just say that some sector out there fucking used the gene seed on women, and maybe they got their own chapters, because I do understand how, like, the separation of the genders is kind of like important to the overall themes of, the Catholic themes of 40K. I kind of get that, but I think you're taking it. Come on, don't take it that far. Don't take it that far. Just put them in. Just do it. Oh no, there's 10 feet tall, like, women in power armor walking around. You know. One of the armies, I was always annoyed that they never, like, really gave any love. Were the Chaos Sisters. I'm like, come on, like, just do it. You can do it, do it that way. No one wants to listen to me. Yeah, but then again, I'm not a real. I'm not your typical neck beardy geeky dude. You know, we're all here because we love things, but I also want to see what things become and what they turn into. I don't always like that, but like I am always interested in what's next. But Jack, if they're as powerful as Space Marines, then they couldn't sell as many miniatures, literally because they would have to raise the point cost. I just lore can be changed. Lore can be changed. I'll just say that. You know, you don't want to necessarily change it too far. You know, otherwise it starts to fall apart under its own weight. But it can be changed. There's quite a lot of room for it to be changed without doing that. They already have demonettes. Yeah, I know. Does not seem like it should be a hard stretch. No, it really isn't. We're talking about 40K at the moment. You know, I don't really have a lot to say about modern Star Wars because I haven't really been watching it. I think the last Star Wars thing I watched was Obi-Wan, which I really liked. But I haven't even seen season 3 of The Mandalorian. You know, I felt like I do feel like there is a little too much Star Wars stuff at the moment and needs to take a rest. You know, needs to lie down for a bit, you know. We need a break. You know, a good few years, like maybe 3 or 4 years, you know, just chill out on it. I mean, they're not going to do that, but like I think that's what would be good. I appreciate the fact that Marvel Studios is taking their time to readjust the cinematic universe. You know, that's why we haven't gotten a lot of that's why like the last big thing that they put out, like big thing that they put out was the Marvels, I think. I think that was the last like major movie that they put out. And I think between that, that and Loki season 2, but like Loki season 2 was the Loki show is related enough to this Marvel Cinematic Universe, yet still separate enough that it kind of works on its own. A little bit. Been hearing The Acolyte is getting review bombed. Yeah, maybe. I haven't even watched it. I'm sort of like, I keep thinking about it, and then I'm like, yeah, there's other things I want to see. Yeah, Marvel's was not bad. It was not their best, but it wasn't bad. It was far from their worst. Man. Yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine's next month. So that's their big 2024 release is going to be Deadpool and Wolverine. The big tentpole. I actually think it's a really good idea that they slow down. You know, because like, what finish line are we rushing to get to? You know. Thoughts on the James Gunn DC universe? Well, I'm looking forward to it, but I have no opinions on it because it technically kind of doesn't exist yet. I'm not gonna, unless it looks like it's really going in the wrong direction, which it's not. I think my only thing about the James Gunn DC universe right now that could be considered a criticism is that I prefer older Superman. And I don't necessarily mean like just the Superman that I grew up with. I mean, I kind of like it when he's an older dude. I don't want to see, I don't need to see like Star Wars as like the plucky upstart or whatever, like. And I'm worried they may be going in that direction. Like, not even the original Superman movie did that. Like, we saw him grow up, but by the end of the first act, he's at the Daily Planet and everything. Like, he's a grown up. He's an adult. Yeah, I am interested in starting with Creature Commandos, which is I'm looking forward to that. I like, and here's the thing. I actually really like Superman. But my idea of what Superman is very different than what the Snyder fans' version of Superman is. To me, Superman is strong but gentle. And that's something that not a lot of people understand, even when they tackle these characters. Like, when I think of strong but gentle, two names come to mind. They're both fictional, but two names really come to mind. One is Superman, the other is Optimus Prime. I'm like, no. Those guys were like, how to put it? They were chill. Like, they had a chill side to them. Optimus Prime could definitely get a little more aggro than Superman. But like, only when he's fighting Megatron, like. Like anyone else, he's kind of chill about. He'll quit. Actually, Optimus Prime will always quit. But he won't be as intense when he's fighting anyone. Not even Devastator, like, compared to when he fights Megatron. Because Megatron gets under his skin. That's the relationship. Yeah, Optimus Prime is more. He's more of a warrior. Yeah. Yeah, but they both know how to pull back, you know? Yeah, Superman is more of an idealized hero. I did see the trailer for Transformers 1. I'm not thrilled because I'm like, that is not a story I care about. I do not care why Megatron is the way he is. He leads an army of evil robots. If that's not enough, no extra explanation is gonna matter. Thinking Optimus Prime is the overprotective dad. Yeah, that's not actually a bad, like, that's not a bad place to start with Optimus. You know, he's not going to shoot Megatron if he's going to risk killing Hot Rod. You know, and Megatron would say that's his great weakness, but Optimus Prime would say that is his great strength. That is the great strength of all Autobots. You know, which is what that kind of attitude is what makes Optimus Prime awesome. Like, ultimately, like, the thing that made me mad is I'm like, about that, like, fucking Man of Steel movie, where I'm like, if Superman can't save a single family without killing the villain brutally, you are not writing a Superman story. You know, I really, he should have spared Zod. Like, he should have found a way to spare Zod. And the thing was, it wasn't hard. You know, it wasn't hard to see how he could avoid that. He could avoid killing him and still save people. Pick him up and fly into space. You, like, just did it. Well, here's the thing. With Apollo, it's okay. Because that's the character. That's why Apollo isn't Superman. That's how Apollo isn't Superman. You know, just like how Midnighter isn't Batman because he'll fucking get drunk and high while fighting criminals. Yeah, and I agree, Flashman. The biggest sin of Man of Steel was ruining Pa Kent. I'm like, how dare you? How fucking dare you? How dare you do this like it's okay? Yeah, that's what the Phantom Zone's for. You know, like, fucking come on, do something. Where's Aw Shucks? Where's Aw Shucks Superman? You know, Superman's corny, okay? He's cornier than corn itself. He needs to be smiling, saving people, and occasionally making dad jokes. I mean, like, that's fucking Superman. You know, he needs to feel like he comes from another time. You know? No, they always got to modernize him. I'm like, no, make him feel like a guy from the 50s or the 40s. You know, it's okay. Just make sure it's the best version of that. It's the best type of person. You know, be the Superman that inspired the character of Atticus Finch. Well, I could see Superman, like, I could see a situation in which Superman would have to destroy someone, would have to physically destroy someone, kill them. But, like, Zod? Yeah, see, what I thought that, here's what I thought they should have done. I was like, no. First of all, fuck that whole Paul Kent thing. Fucking in that seed where Paul Kent dies, instead Superman saves him. But to conceal his identity, he takes like the red coat that one kid was wearing. And you know, people just see the red cape. You know, they're like, "What was that?" It's faster than the bird, you know. It's faster than a plane, you know. And then he like he does saves the guy and then flies off, you know, like a stick of light. Then comes back as regular Clark Kent. It's just like Dad, but Pa Kent know what he did. Pa Kent knows. He just says, nah, son, you're. I've never been so glad that you didn't listen to me. Yeah. Yeah, he's fast as a speeding bullet. Come on. You know how fast that is? It's fast as a tornado, I'll tell you that, boy. You know? You know, and then, like, you know, the whole thing with Zod happens, and, like, but he doesn't kill Zod. He actually, like, chucks him into the Phantom Zone or, like, exiles him on the moon or something. You know, something. And in the sequel, he fights Brainiac. He's got to fight Brainiac. And we do the whole, like, oh, yeah, no. Brainiac is the computer that doomed Krypton. You know, now he's out to finish the job, kill the last Kryptonian. You know, and then Superman and Zod have to team up in order to defeat Brainiac. You know, and then then Zod and Superman at the end, they kind of acknowledge each other. You know, it's like, all right. And Superman's like, well, you helped me, so I'm not gonna fucking. You helped me, so I'll let you go. And Zod is sort of like, all right, I have some respect for you, so I'm not gonna try to kill you. You know, like he's still kind. He goes from he goes from nemesis to rival. You know. You know, and in the third one is that one's Lex Luthor. That's when Lex Luthor shows up. after Brainiac has tried to take over the fucking world. Actually, he might show up in the second one, but briefly. But the real one is the third movie. The real one is the third movie where Luther is like, look, we got aliens and evil fucking galaxy robots now. So, the people of Earth, don't worry. Like, he pulls an evil Iron Man. Like he does the Iron Man thing of like, I'm gonna defend the planet, but it's Lex fucking Luthor, not Tony Stark. Tony Stark is ultimately a good person, whereas Lex Luthor's a piece of shit. It's all about Lex's ego. And we put him in the green and purple suit. We put him in the green and purple suit that fires kryptonite rays. 'Cause come on. 'Cause come on. And that one kind of like ends in a stalemate. That one ends in a stalemate. He does not defeat Luthor cleanly. He stops whatever Luthor is doing from like that's gonna be so bad it kills people. Can't actually get rid of Luthor. And it's a little bit more than Superman's mercy, although that aspect definitely needs to be there. Because now, once you do that, now the Justice League starts to form. And you make the Justice Leagues you have Wonder Woman be the one who comes up with the idea of the Justice League. We're more powerful together. We could do more together. And they start creating that. And maybe you have like a couple of the DC regs show up, but you don't try to do all of them at once. Like I would start with Superman, Wonder Woman, and the Green Arrow. But I would do a Green Arrow movie, like at some point before this. And I would have them fight Sinestro. Because the Justice League movie will also be the introduction of Green Lantern. But Green Lantern don't join until the end. You have a little stuff dealing with Batman. But like Batman don't come on board until the end. And you kind of emphasize the fact that like Batman feels a little bit out of his league. but he ain't gonna like show it. But like he knows he's surrounded by people with actual superpowers. Like he's a guy with a utility belt. But the one thing he knows he is that he and like Green Lantern got in common. They're dudes. They're regular people. Like they're humans. They're mortals. Like even though Hal Jordan started as a mortal, he's not now. He's got Green Lantern power, you know? You know, but that's kind of like what ultimately will bring Green Lantern in. Not only seeing that it won't be because he thinks that they're useless. Is that he doesn't see why he should deviate from the Lantern Corps. I might even actually just skip Hal Jordan and just do John Stewart as Green Lantern. Well, that would be my Justice League right there. It would be Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Green Lantern, Green Arrow. I would bring Aquaman into the second Justice League movie. You know, so then Aquaman would be in, and then we basically got all the core members. And I would have Aquaman be the one that like hooks up with Hawkman. You know, maybe through Hawkgirl. Maybe introduce Hawkman and Hawkgirl in an Aquaman movie. Because we will eventually want them. Martian Manhunter? Eventually. Eventually I would want Martian Manhunter. But like you know how I would introduce Martian Manhunter? I would introduce John St. John in a Batman movie. Like one of those, like John St. John is, or John Johns is like assisting Batman. He's assisting Batman from like a distance, you know? So fans, the minute you realize that this is John Johns, the fans realize who he is, but it's not actually revealed. And in the second Batman movie, I would have Batman fight something that is a little beyond his ken. I don't know who that would be, though. It'd have to be a character that was like supernatural in origin. You know, supernatural or space based, but I can't think of a good fit at the moment. Yeah, yeah, yeah. John Johns takes the form of a human detective. Yeah, exactly. Like he will assist Batman, you know. But in the first time we see him, he's not gonna like turn to an alien or anything. Although his fear of fire we might establish. Batman versus Man Bat. I don't know if that's a big enough one. No, we need something that's like from outer space. Or Flashman, you went just where I was getting to. Clayface. Clayface. Because John Johns is also a shapeshifter. I don't want it to be Clarion the Witch Boy. I don't want it to be Clarion the Witch Boy because, like, Clarion the Witch Boy is a character you love to hate, but because he is a little brat, you kind of only hate him. You don't really. It takes a lot for you to be afraid of Clarion the Witch Boy. You know, whereas someone like Clayface is like immediately threatening. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Shapeshifter versus shapeshifter. And that's when that shit happens. And you can even like kind of redo Clayface's origin so it has something to do with outer space. You know, and like the next time, you know, like John Johns shows back up, like John Johns actually will like track down Batman and just flat out find the Batcave. Like he's figured out his identity. He's figured it all out. You know, and all the fans will be like, "Oh, I know what's coming. I know what's coming." Which version of Clayface? I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know which one we would use, but we would definitely. I don't know, but I feel like, dude, I just realized something. If we make it having something to do with space or like tie it into what happens with Brainiac, you know, like Brainiac's got a ship and it's got all of his like experiments and crap, and like one of them gets loose, and that's what creates Clayface. Instead of just having Clayface, which we start out with just Clayface, but gradually we introduce all the members of the Mud Pack. We'll give Clayface like a sort of Venomy origin, you know. Mudpack. Oh, you don't know Mudpack? Yeah, 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 yeah. So they're like all these different villains who were named Clayface, right? Well, in the late '80s, around the time of the Batman uh, Keaton Batman movie, there was a storyline going through the Batman comics called Mudpack, where all of the Clayface villains had got together and formed a gang. Yeah, it was like Matt Hagen, Carl Borloff. I forget what the guy's name was. The actor, the original Clayface that was the actor in the comic. Um, How many Clayfaces have there been? 11. 11 different villains in the core DC universe, not counting multiversal variants. There are 11 of them. Yeah, Basil Carlo was the first one. Yeah, then there was Matt Hagen, who was the one that was exposed to radioactive protoplasm. So here we go. Then there was Preston Payne. He was the one that was created through pharmaceuticals. Then Sandra Fuller, who was the one who brought all the other. Yeah, she's the fourth Clayface, also known as Lady Clay. She formed the Mud Pack with the original and third Clayfaces. So that would be, yeah. So it would be Basil Karloff. Was it's Basil Karloff, right? Basil Carlo. Basil Carlo, because I'm like, I know it's a Boris Karloff takeoff. Basil Carlo, Matt Hagen, Preston Payne, and Sandra Fuller. So it'd be like, at first, it's just like Matt Hagen or something, or Basil Carlo. And you're like, oh, okay, so that's Clayface. And that's going to be like, oh, wait, there are like 3 of them, right? There are 3 of them, and we didn't realize it because they're shapeshifters. Yeah, they did merge together and form a horrific Devastator. They did. I think it was called Ultimate Clayface. They referred to him as Ultimate Clayface. You know, so that's what brings like Batman into like the greater DC universe. And when John Johns tracks him down in the Batcave, like, you're like, oh, okay, John Johns has figured out who Batman is. He's gonna confront him and try to figure some shit out. But it turns out that Batman has already figured out that John Johns is an alien. Like, he's already figured it out. And so Batman really only has the one question. The real question is, what are we? Are we friends? Or are we foe? I suggest you choose wisely, Mr. Johns. I don't want to have to fight you, but I can, and I will. You know? Yeah. Yeah, and we'll totally do that at the end of this Batman movie. Like a giant, Devastator fucking Clayface. So basically, what we'll do is we'll make the core. Basically everything leading up to the second Justice League movie is considered the first phase. That'd be the first phase. You know, and the second Justice League movie, that is probably when I would introduce Darkseid. That's when I would introduce Darkseid. And one of the monkey wrenches I would throw in is we probably need like another Superman movie somewhere in here. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe we don't have to. But there should be in maybe the first Justice League movie. They should go up against Lex Luthor. They should go up against Lex Luthor and some of the shit he's been able to do. You know, maybe we'll have him create Bizarro or something, you know, like something. You know. And at the end of that one, they put Luthor away. They put him in prison. You know. So in the third movie, when Darkseid starts showing up, like, that's when it's revealed that being in prison did not stop Lex Luthor. Like, he has been working on things to destroy metahumans the entire time. The entire time. You know, he's got secret bases, he's got secret plans, he's got all kinds of shit, because fucking Lex Luthor. You know, and he helps them defeat Apocalypse or Darkseid. He helps them defeat Darkseid. You know, because I mean, that's his. You think Lex Luthor is not gonna fight a guy like Darkseid? Of course he is. Like, he's a bad guy, but like Lex Luthor's ego is so great, he's not gonna be able to accept the existence of Darkseid, let alone rule on the planet. You know, he don't want Superman to rule the planet over him. You know? You know, and maybe the second Justice League movie is when we start, like, yeah, we'll have like a big battle royale at the climax of that movie. You know, of a big battle royale at the climax of that movie, and like the call will go out to any and all heroes out there. Powered and not powered, super powered and not super powered. And that's when we introduce a lot of the people that we haven't introduced yet, like Elongated Man, like Detective Chimp, you know, like this is the moment where we really see, like, oh my God, the DC universe is crazy. Like, anyone we haven't really brought to the fore yet, we give a cameo, right? They get to do something, you know? You know, and if they do something super cool, they get to like they get to like catchphrase it. You know, but they repel Darkseid for now. For now. You know, and the second one, it basically has the induction of a bunch of the other members of the Justice League. One of the cameos I would want to be there is Buona Beast. You know, just because I think it would be fun to have like wannabes there for like a hot second, you know, just to do the whole like, oh my God, this is crazy. You know, and then, you know, post credit sequence. Fucking Lex Luthor approaches one of the other villains and is like, it seems that this Justice League is going to stand in the way of my plans. I can't have that. And he's like talking to like, you know, like maybe Clayface, you know, or maybe he's found a piece of Brainiac that he's gonna bring back as like the Brainiac android. Um, you know, some shit like that. And then you start working. And then part of the second phase is then you start doing the Crisis of Infinite Earths. That's when you do that. The Creeper and Ambush Bug. Yeah. Why not? Why not? You know? Let's see. There's something on YouTube that's drive me nuts showing up when I watch witch videos or occult stuff. That's 1% or main character BS. You might have to go into more detail. I think I know what you mean, but like I'm not entirely certain. Ooh. Ooh, GL. Ooh. Yeah, you have Amanda Waller be like, someone's got to keep these people in line. And then, like, fucking out of the shadows comes Lex Luthor. He's like, do we have a deal, Ms. Waller? I knew you would see reason. We must defend ourselves from these outside forces. They must be controlled. Yeah, no, that would be awesome. How would I work in Batman Beyond? Oh, I think you should just straight up do a Batman Beyond movie. You know, a Terry McGinnis movie, you know? You know, but Terry McGinnis is like always in the future, you know what I mean? Like I would have him show up at some point in like the Crisis of Infinite Earths phase. Like only 1% people can do this here vibration type of stuff, how to tell you're the main character type of stuff. Wait. Is that showing up in like witch and occult videos? It's been showing up on my feed and finding it annoying. Well, what I'm asking is, are they in the same video? Like, are they in which videos? Are people in Witch Talk actually like talking like that? Or are these videos that are like show up in your For You page as well as the other stuff? I'm gonna refill my coffee hopefully while I'm back, there'll be an answer to that. Oh, okay, Kira. All right. Oh, so here comes doing a new movie. Cool. Carnival at the End of Days. Well, that sounds cool. Yeah, like one of the, as far as the 1% main character syndrome shit, we all want to know that our life is meaningful. We all want to know that. And we all want to know that because no one ever does. No one ever knows that. It's not a thing you can know. Because first of all, you would have to be dead in order to make the person has to be dead in order to make the judgment. And second of all, even if they are, history makes up shit all the time. You don't know what's in a person. You don't know what's in a dead person. You only know what they've done. Is that what made their life meaningful? Did it feel like that? I don't know. I think that trying to live a meaningful life is the wrong tack. I think that's the wrong tack. I think the first real question is what's important to me? What's important to me outside of everybody else? And that can be the care of other people, by the way. You know, we're not talking about you as an island. I'm not talking about you as an island. I'm talking about outside of anyone else's like expectations. What is it that makes you want to continue with life? That's your first step, which I'm sounds simple enough, but it's actually kind of a doozy. But I think this whole like worry over like main character or NPC or 1%, all that shit, it's a useless shorthand for that because it doesn't actually get to the crux that we're all trying to get to. How do I live a meaningful life is result driven. And it's a result that you're not going to see until your life ends, at which point you're probably not going to be there to see it. So pointless. Absolutely fucking pointless. And you're the only one who could judge anyway. You're the only one that would be able to judge anyway. So that's the kind of thinking you can only really do if you absolutely believe that there is an afterlife from which you can observe that. One in which you are part of a thing outside of yourself that also observes yourself. So basically, if there is a God and you rejoin it, sure, you can make that call. But not before. One of the main character tropes I absolutely despise, that I hate, that I am like, get that shit away from me. The anointed. Or probably better way of putting it, the prophesized one. Your Harry Potters. You know, like, oh my God, we knew this day would come, King Arthur. Oh, fuck you. Give a crap. That's such a lazy shorthand to make a character important. You were sent here by Providence. Yeah. You know, that's one of the other things about the Superman story that I kind of like. Him being here is an accident. Him being here is an accident. And at the end of the day, he's still Paul Marquand's boy. They still look at him as their boy. I think that's actually a really, really, really important aspect of Superman. That's why I hate the whole idea of like, oh, well, he's the savior, so he's like Jesus. I'm like, no. No. Him being on Earth is supposed to be an accident. Because that's one thing he has in common with humanity. His existence is an accident. You know, a lot of superheroes got that. I think it depends on what the universe is like. If there is a Santa Claus in the same universe as Superman, he doesn't need to believe he's met him. But if Santa Claus in the universe that Superman is in is more mysterious, may or may not exist, then I don't know if Superman would strictly believe in him. But he would leave out cookies and milk. He would still leave out cookies and milk as an adult. You know, because I feel like that's how Superman is. So you'd have like that one story that's all about every year Clark Kent leaves out cookies and milk for Santa, you know, even though he kind of knows it's ridiculous. You know, he just likes doing it. You know, but then he's got to fight someone on Christmas Eve. And he misses it. He misses it. You know, he doesn't get to leave out cookies and cream for Santa that year. Because it's like, I don't know, Bizarro's doing something. Doesn't matter. But when he gets back to his apartment, his house, or wherever he lives, there's a Christmas tree that he didn't finish putting up with a present underneath it. And a note from Santa saying, "You've been a very good boy this year." From Santa, but the S looks a little bit like the Superman S. Yeah. So you're left with that. Maybe he is real, Well, of course, Santa would use lead lining around the present. Needs to be a surprise. But that's just like a little aside, you know. Lead foil. Oh, in this day and age, has lead foil. Who would know? He reads the note. Ho, ho, ho. Oh, yeah, or maybe that's it. Maybe it shows up in the Fortress of Solitude, right? Like somewhere Superman wouldn't really bother to put up a Christmas tree, like you were in the neighborhood. Although I think I prefer You've Been a Good Boy this year. What was Santa leave for Lex Luthor? Coal. A single lump of coal. What else is he gonna leave someone like Lex Luthor? Yeah. So the relationship between Superman and Santa is entirely based on how real you want Santa Claus to be in the same universe. Personally, I think it's better if you leave it like a little mysterious, or do the anyone who gives gifts on Christmas is Santa Claus enough. A coal and a wig. Oh. 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 You've been a very naughty boy, Lex. Very naughty. But I don't think it's right not to give someone something on Christmas. So here's your coal. And here's a wig. You look like you need it. Fucking. Like even Santa Claus thinks like Lex Luthor's a piece of shit. Oh my God. I like that. I like that answer. Coal and a wig. Oh. No, I don't think Santa Claus would give you a lice infested something like that. That'd be a little too much. I think just the coal and a wig, like a toupee. And then, like, every year you just do a comic that is just like, the Superman Christmas special. And then Lex Luthor's got to get revenge on Santa Claus. Superman's got to save him. I knew you were real. Never doubted for a moment, sir. You do believe in me. It's like, you believe in me, Clark. Never doubted it for a moment, sir. Just wouldn't be Christmas without you. You know. let's get those kids at the orphanage their presents. You know. Oh. Goes to his kryptonite storage and his coal comes out. No, I like the idea of the wig. I like the idea of the wig a lot. You know, curse you, Santa, and curse you, Superman. Oh, man. Oh, man. That'd be tits. That'd be so great. Oh, dude. That would be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool. See, that's what I like about art. You know, you could do stuff like that. Doom in the Dark Age? I have not. Coming next year. Okay. Wait, what? Let me make sure we got it here. All right. Let's see what we got here. Okay, all right. All right. All right. That looks good. That looks pretty good. That looks good to me. Oh my God. Excuse me. Yeah.
Gomez in here? Can you get it if you
I saw Odin just run by. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Is the cat door up?
It is not. Yep.
Check the closet just to see there's apparently a cat fight. No Gomez?
No Gomez in there.
Yeah, might have been Gomez.
Yep. Well, it sounds like Gomez got into a fight. Gomez. Oh, hey, Odin. Meow. Hello. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what's going on out there. Let's see. Black Myth Wukong. Oh yeah. I saw some of that. Yeah, I saw some of the stuff for that. You know, pretty good. Oh man. Woo. Let's see. Is there anything else that's like supposed to be coming out soon?
Akra, cheers, chicham. Mini de cheese. Mini de Zukudo, Mart Solan. Akra, cheers, chicham. Mini de cheese. Mini.
Boy, young one, are you all right?
No. She's not all right.
Nerel? Oh, you're not well. Please, please, my child, let me help you.
Stay away from me! Nayrel! Is that how I raised you? No, Mother. But I must carry this burden alone. I must get to Akarat's tomb. But look at you. You're killing yourself. I don't know how much longer I can... I'm here, little magpie. I missed you so much. I'm so proud of you.
All right, now time for the evil.
Now, I need you to give up. No. Of course it's you. You monster. Let go. No. You made a choice. And I warned you, little magpie. there won't be consequences.
Surrender.
No! I control the stone!
You hold the stone. You control nothing.
Maybe you're right. Maybe I could use some help. Cheers to chum. Mene kumbis. Mene
Hmm. That look good. Yeah, dude, I really want a copy of Diablo 4. I really want a copy. Uh, well. What's SMTV? SMTV? Oh, Shin Megami Tensei Vengeance? Yeah, Shin Megami Tensei 5. Huh.
Humans need the will to survive at any cost. And those who lack that strength of will no longer deserve to live.
It is the world's fate to be remade. Birth, death, then rebirth.
Ruinous thunder!
It's exceedingly unlikely that this could be the work of a human. A demon must be behind it.
Astral Spectrac Arrow!
Demons and humans cannot coexist.
Find the weakness in your heart and take advantage of it.
Oh, it's another...
After our parents passed
So it's a
away,
party
it was
game.
my
Okay.
responsibility to keep me also safe.
Or a game with a party
But having the
character.
power to summon demons isn't enough.
I, Lilith of the Kadishtu, shall return the world to its true form.
We destroyed this and we could end their plans.
Always such a shame when the prey is wary of their hunters.
I never faced my own problems. No more. I won't abandon you.
I still want my revenge and my freedom.
Yoko?
Your knowledge will serve. Its destruction is at hand.
I have to do this. I have to save everyone.
Oh, that came out like just a couple days ago. Huh. Huh. I definitely don't have $70 for that. So, I guess we'll just... Oh, well. Oh, Persona 5 Royal's great. Although, speaking of which, I never actually finished Striker. I don't know why I didn't finish Striker. Something must have happened. Yeah, I kind of blew the... I almost, like, blew the wad on V Rising, so, like, you know. You know, oh, although I did defeat Dracula today. That was great. That was fun. Although now I have to, like, rearrange my whole castle just to fucking fit that throne in my goddamn place. I'm like, man, I thought... Oh, and the worst part, the throne don't allow you to fucking control your minions from it. Like the other thrones do. I don't know why that's the case. You know, like, that's one of those, like, why can't I control my servants through this damn thing? Like all the other fucking thrones. Is that a glitch? Or, like, is that a bug or is that intentional? And if it's intentional, why? Like, what else does that thing do for me other than look cool? I mean, like, I don't mind it looking cool, but I thought it would have at least the same functionality as the old thrones, right? Yeah, what's the point? You know, it's like, what? Why? So now I have to have like 2 thrones? I mean, like, what does it give me? You know, I thought it was like a cosmetic where it was just like, oh, yeah, it's got the same functionality, but like, you know. No, that seems to be intentional. Why? That's so strange. Like, does it, like, increase all your defenses in PvP mode or something? You know, like... Even if that's the case, why? You know, like, why wouldn't you... Why? Yeah, I don't get what the point of that is. Yeah, it's an oversized trophy, which... I mean, it's gonna be no matter what. So why not just give it the same functionality as the other thrones? Know what I'm saying? Ah, well. Oh, well. I got shit to deal. I got shit to deal with anyway. Like I still got this game. There's a bunch of crap I got to do for it this week, so I'll probably be signing off in just a few minutes. Because I have to go do that, go do some of that. But I'll be back tomorrow on Twitch, probably playing V-Rising. And rearranging my motherfucking castle so that I can put that motherfucking throne somewhere. Oh, yeah, it's huge. It's gigantic. It takes like 6 tiles and 2 floors. Yeah, so it's gigantic. All right. So until next time, Ave Satanas, Disco Inferno. Remember, me and Satan love y'all right back. So tomorrow, 7 p.m. Twitch. We'll fucking figure out what to do about this goddamn castle, All right. Talk to you later.